again. Hello? Hello? Working?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome to the Town of Derry Planning Board meeting for November 20th, 2024. We routinely start the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would rise and join me. The Planning Board continues to offer remote participation on a voluntary basis. If any member of the Planning Board participates remotely, vote shall be by roll call. To attend this meeting using a computer or smart device, visit www.zoom.us. Enter the meeting ID 754-663-912. You may also attend by phone for audio participation only. Phone number is area code 646-558-8656. Same meeting ID, 754-663-912. If you are joining by phone, you may you hit *9 to raise your hand to be recognized, and then once recognized, *6 to unmute yourself. And if you are using Zoom, there's a button to raise your hand to be recognized. If you have difficulties getting in, please call 603-845-5585. We'll now introduce the staff and members who are present this evening. To my far right is our Director of Planning, Ms. Robideau.
Good evening.
Our Planning Board Clerk, Ms. Cavallo.
Good evening.
Alternate, Mr. Mousy.
Good evening.
Vice Chair, Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening, all.
My far left is our Media Director, Mr. Preventure. Good evening. Town Engineer, Mr. LaRue.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Fishman.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Feinauer.
Good evening.
Secretary, Mr. Malaby.
Hello.
And I'm Dave Nelson. I'm the Chair. So, first item on this evening's agenda, it would be to seat Mr. Mousy in the absence of Mr. Myers. We have before us escrow, item ID 24-35, a release for Brasher. Ms. Robideau?
Okay, so this is for the Pisano's Pizza expansion at 4 and 6 Chester Road. This was a performance bond in the amount of $34,764.50. The request is to release that and retain zero.
Mr. Chair, seeing no comments, I so move.
Second.
It's been moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malamy to approve the release as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Mousy?
In favor?
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is item ID 24-36, a release for Ahern and Nichols.
Okay, this is also a performance bond for 32 Pinkerton Street for an expansion at the dental practice. The amount of the existing letter of credit is $71,057.35, and the request is to release that in full with zero retained.
Seeing no questions, Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby to approve the release as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We now have before us the approval of minutes for November 6th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any errors or omissions?
Mr. Chair, seeing nobody raising their hands, and I'll move to accept them as written.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to approve the minutes as written. I'm just not with it tonight. I will poll the board. Mr. Mousy?
Approve.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And I'm the chair votes yes. Correspondence.
In what may be unprecedented, we actually have two pieces of correspondence. The first one is in your, I believe it's in everyone's packet. It's a letter from the Salem Planning Board. They're holding public hearings on the PPE casino resorts that we've discussed here. And it's going to be on the agenda for November 26th, December 10th, December 26th, and January 14th next year.
Wow.
And then we also have a letter here from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission telling us about the successes of the commission and with membership dues due for the period of July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026.
Excellent. Under other business, we have architectural design review, new signs for parcel ID 05039-001, 2 Island Pond Road, Builders Reserve and Stiletto Construction in the West Running Brook District. We have some graphics attached to the memo.
Okay.
Opening?
Yep, so for this, as the board knows, any sign in the West Running Brook District needs to be approved and reviewed by the planning board prior to the issuance of the sign permit. Builders Reserve and Stiletto construction moved from Hillside Plaza to 2 Island Pond Road. The board did hear a concept discussion from them. The ZBA did grant a variance to allow the use on November 7th, and the owners are requesting that the board review the proposed signage. And there is a suggested motion attached to the staff report.
Okay. So just, not to the email, though, so.
No, on the actual staff report itself, at the bottom.
Okay.
That may be following the email. I'm not sure how the packet was put together.
All right. Here it is.
Okay.
Single page, so everyone got that, and would someone like to make the recommended motion?
Mr. Chair, seeing if no members have any questions regarding this sign, then I move pursuant to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, Article 12, signs, Section 165-101.12, signs in the West Running Brook District, to approve the sign design presented for Builders Reserve and Stiletto Construction, parcel 05053-001, 2 Island Pond Road, as presented. The board finds the sign is compatible with the surrounding buildings, meets the regulations contained in the ordinance, and complements the surrounding architecture.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to approve the proposed signage. I will poll the board. Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So the next 2 items under other business are to schedule a public hearing for our proposed revisions to the zoning ordinance and LDCR, but we also have workshops, so I would suggest that we postpone those votes until we have completed our workshops, and then if we have no more changes, we can go ahead and go back to those motions for public hearing.
Okay, good.
So, having said that, our next item is a public hearing on workshop number 2 to review proposed changes to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance and land development control regulations relating to abutters, appeal standing, zoning ordinance definitions and permitted uses, parking, technical review committee, and submittal deadlines.
Mr. Chair, I move to schedule a public hearing.
No, John. So what I'd like to do is have everyone look at the revised text.
Oh, yep.
I want to make sure that everyone's happy with all of the changes before we go ahead and
And then we'll
bring them to
these.
public hearing.
Because the public hearings won't be scheduled till December.
Yeah, I think, yeah, It's just
Actually, I have
workshops.
one requested change after having read it for about the third time.
Are you in the LDCR or in zoning?
I am in the LDCR. The number at the bottom of the page says page 2. Excuse me. It is section 170-5.1 D6. It currently reads, "The planning department will request the following department signatures on the plan: Public Works, Police Department, Fire Department, and Code Enforcement." It says then, "No plan will be submitted to the planning board without the required TRC signatures, absent a memo from that department explaining why a signature could not be provided." I would like to strike that second sentence, starting with "no plan," and replace it with, "If one or more departments decline to sign the plan, the planning board requests that the department or departments submit a detailed memo of explanation," or, actually, I was trying to write this
Yeah, it's, yeah.
when we convened. So request that the department or departments or the director of planning submit a detailed memo of explanation why the plan was not signed by that department. So I would like to not require a department to do something that I think is not within our remit to require them to do, and suggest that we are going to request them, in the absence of signing the plan, to submit a detailed memo of explanation, and if that's not forthcoming, to request that from the director of planning. Does that seem like a reasonable change?
Yeah, I would go along with that.
Support that.
And there's probably 2 locations where the block is involved with, because we also got, there'll be multiple pages, this one's 3, number 22. A block shall be placed on the cover sheet of each subdivision plan for signatures by the Technical Review Committee pursuant to 170-5.1.d.6.
Yeah, so that refers back to this. I think that's fine. We still want the, the block on the plan. So
Yes.
would someone like to make a motion to make the change, and I'll finish writing it?
Okay, so I just want to confirm, so it will say, "No plan will be submitted to the planning board without the required TR signatures, period," and then
No,
if one or more?
no.
Okay, okay.
So
So-
the only sentence I'm keeping is the first one.
Oh, perfect, okay, this is why I asked,
And then it
okay.
says, if one or
Okay.
more departments decline to sign the plan,
Mm-hmm.
the planning board requests the department,
Or
with
departments.
S in parentheses,
Mhm.
or the director of planning to submit a memorandum of detailed explanation.
Okay,
Why the signature wasn't provided.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, thank you.
It's typical that when we say no to something, we have to explain our no vote.
So can I have a motion to make that amendment?
I will move to, as written by the chairperson, to accept that motion.
Second.
So it's moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby. Any discussion? Now to poll the board. Mr. Mounsey?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Yeah, that cleaned up what I thought was potentially confusing.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any outstanding issues in what we have reviewed that they think is
No, I don't.
potentially confusing? And again, to summarize, most of the changes to the zoning ordinance are issues that were required by state action. They changed
Yes.
the statutes
Mhm.
that authorize us to conduct zoning and planning, so we have an obligation to make our regulations conform to state law. There were a couple of places where we moved the definition of parking requirements from the zoning ordinance to the LDCRs to be more consistent with it being a site plan issue rather than a zoning issue. And then within the LDCRs, changes were primarily those related to parking as required by state law. And then we added a new section to describe the operations of the Technical Review Committee. And we added a new section to describe the operation of our external peer review plan consultancy.
Yeah.
And the others I missed?
Mr. Chair, the director, Ms. Robidoux, wrote on one of these regarding the amount of vehicles that an elderly apartment should have. And I don't think that was finalized, was it? But it was 1.3
We,
versus going down to 1?
we had, for independent adult, our LDCR had, it had 1.5. And in the zoning ordinance, it was 2. So we have, if you look in the independent adult, so that would be section 165, 150, we have amended it and we point it to the LDCR. And so then when you go to the LDCR, it says 1.5 under independent adult for parking under 170-63.
There was a discussion in general about parking requirements. And Ms. Robidoux and I had a little conference this afternoon. The board had requested data about parking usages for other developments such as 19 Elm Street, which we didn't actually find. And so it's an open action item to gather more data. Ms. Robidoux plans to put all that information in a folder on our shared OneDrive resource folder available to the planning board. And so my suggestion is that we come back to any more fine review of parking requirements until we have such data and can consider it in some detail. At this point, what we've done on parking is what we have to be compliant with state law.
And I would like to add that DPW has some concerns with the larger the development, the way it's written, it goes to 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, not per bedroom. So the larger the project, the more compromised that parking could be if a developer wants to develop per the new requirement, state requirement. Whereas if you have multiple bedrooms, you have multiple drivers, multiple cars, that could be a taxing situation on the other parking in the neighborhoods or street parking or things like that, that we have to be careful of, I guess, when we're looking at some of these larger developments for housing coming in. We've talked about that at length with Liz as well.
I share some of those concerns. However, my understanding is the legislature hasn't given us the option. How shall I say this politely? The legislature has started to micromanage certain aspects of planning and zoning that they feel that certain towns aren't doing in the best interests of the people of the state of New Hampshire. So, right or wrong, we can certainly have discussions about this and see if there are innovative things we could do. But my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Robidoux, is we have to make these changes. Otherwise, we're in conflict with state law, and state law always trumps local regulation. We're not a home rule state, so.
It's just difficult when you have an impact to local streets and
And
neighborhoods.
suggest that DPW get together with one of the town's state representatives, and there's still time to file bills before the start of the next section. So if there is something that was concerning, it could be, take Representative Milts, he's on the Public Works Department, and that's probably where a bill like that would go. So he may be one that you might want to reach out, and they can put together try to get it changed. But as the chair said, that it appears that the state legislature, along with the Senate, is reducing whatever powers the zoning and planning board has. And you'll see more of that coming up.
I'm sorry?
Planning director.
I just want to add that what we're establishing here are minimums. And on a case-by-case basis, as we work with our developers on multifamily developments, if we feel a strong need that, to add more parking, we can have that discussion with the developer. In most cases, the ones we've worked with have been very accommodating to addressing like needs and concerns. And we have very open, straightforward conversations, and so we have the minimum, but we can always ask for more, and they have that option to add more.
Yes, correct. The state has limited our ability to require, but we can certainly have collaborative discussions with a developer who I'm pretty much sure in all cases wants their tenants, whether they be commercial or residential, to find they have adequate parking to conduct their lifestyle. So that's certainly an option. Okay. Any other discussion? Any other changes?
Yeah.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes. Just a minor typographical change, I suppose.
Please, yeah.
Section 170-63 C4. I believe in the independent adult housing section, should that be a subsection B there, or is that intended to be a part of A as well?
No, that should be subsection B. Thank you. We'll correct that. And
Oh.
I did have a couple of editorial changes to 170-5.2, the outside review, when the board's ready.
Okay.
So if you look at subsection D, bearing in mind our discussion at the last meeting, in that second sentence, I would like to amend that to say, for amendments to major subdivisions or site plans that do not change access, do not increase the intensity of use or structure, I'd like to add like the S in parentheses, or do not significantly alter drainage or utility infrastructure. Just to clarify that.
Wait, what page
Grammatically, it was
number are we
weird.
on, Brian?
The very last page. So the outside review and outside engineering review section, it's its own sheet of paper.
It's its own sheet.
Yeah, it's on a separate sheet because it was a separate
Oh, okay.
workshop. That one.
That's why I can't find it.
Yeah,
What was it,
Great.
standalone?
So can you repeat the,
of course, yep. So in subsection D, third line down, I would like to add, do not increase the intensity of use or structures, add that S in the parent, or do not significantly alter drainage. I'd like to add the words do not before significantly.
okay? That sounds good. Can we have a motion to make that amendment?
Also move.
Second. Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malamy to make the minor amendment to 170-5.2, Section D. We'll pull the board. Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. If you give me a second to try to find it, there was one other change where I thought Word got the better of you and made something no longer a separate section, and it should probably have been. Let me see if I can quickly find it.
Are you in the zoning section or the?
Probably in the
ABCO?
zoning.
Are you
I'm
in-
going backwards. I'm trying to find it because I didn't. bring a marked up one with me, I'm sorry to say.
I believe it's section 165-35,
The OMB?
B6. C is struck out, but
Yeah, so the C used to say, "These facilities shall be subject to architectural design review regulations." And I'm wondering if that only applied to subsection 6,
Let me find out.
or whether it applied generally to OMB. It was in B6C.
It used to be C.
It now
Oh,
is
Now it's 7.
commingled with, no, it's now commingled with B. There's no new
yeah,
section.
It's,
Combine
it
C
will,
with
when
7.
we insert the changes, it will retain C. It's just the way, because we added 7.
So 7 will go away and go back to C?
No, C will stay, and then 7 will be the new. It's just the way.
Oh, that's capital
It's,
C.
it's the way
There was
Word
a-
tracks the
And-
change.
And so architectural design regs only applies to congregate care and assisted living?
Let me see, congregate.
I mean, it was that way for a long time, but I'm just surprised.
See how, yeah, I believe that is true. If you want to,
All right, if that's the way it was, then we'll leave it for now.
okay,
Because there is another section of the zoning ordinance that specifies what districts it applies to, and I just want to make sure it doesn't conflict.
yeah, in any new site plan that comes in, as part of TRC, we do require that architectural design review. We take a look at it there, and we let applicants know during the consult with staff that they will be expected to provide renderings and things for review to comply with our design regs. So we'll make sure that we capture it there, but later we can go through if you want and make that more clear for the OMB.
Okay? Good catches. Anything else that anyone has noticed that we need to address or fix?
And thank you for proofing, it's much appreciated.
All right, so we've made a couple of amendments. I think we now could go back to the item relating to scheduling what we have revised for public hearing.
So you want me to read for, by the zoning by itself and then go back down and do the LDCR by itself? Or do it all?
But do we, is there a motion maker for this?
Yeah, there's a move to,
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and use that one then.
because the amendments are already in the listed titles of what I'm going to read.
And, you could say the proposed amendments as revised.
All right, so I'm moving to schedule the public hearing for the proposed amendments as revised by the board on November 20th, 2024, to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance and the land development control regulations for Wednesday, December the 18th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, and I assume we don't need to read all the individual
No,
section numbers?
we'll include that in the motion.
Okay.
All right, so that's for the record. Yep.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so it has been moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malamy, to schedule a public hearing for our revised regulations and ordinance. Any discussion? We'll pull the board. Mr. Mousy?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll have a hearing on those. So that takes us to the completion of other business. We completed the workshop, so I think the only thing we skipped over was planning director and chairman comments.
At this time, I really have no updates other than we are going to, as you mentioned, we're going to create a planning board resource folder in your OneDrive link. So we'll put things like the parking, any information we find on parking, housing, all of that will go into that, that folder. I added the mobility report from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, which kind of outlines how CART works, and it goes over the 2023 data. It's actually very surprising to see where, how Derry residents are utilizing CART and the other communities that utilize it and where they're going and what they're using it for. Of note in that report, I was actually surprised. Derry residents are mainly using CART for shopping and work. They're using it to get to their work. So that's a really, it's kind of heartening to hear that. The other thing is I do have I have a call out to the Community Development Director in Nashua to see what I can obtain from them with regard to their parking, multifamily parking, just so that we can, as we need to, we can continue that discussion. Next meeting, we have another concept review at 2 Island Pond Road. That will be for Rockingham Cycle. And then I also believe perhaps the Gateway Committee might give a little bit more robust update to the board.
Oh,
So
no
we'll
pressure.
put that on the schedule, and we can talk about that at our next meeting.
We expect pictures and maps and circles and arrows.
We can,
Got a cough coming on.
Excellent. So in terms of the chairman's update, I will reiterate that we have one vacant alternate position on the board, and those who would like to come help us in our important and oftentimes fun work, go to the Town of Derry website, where the volunteer for boards and committees page is, and put your name in, please. I'll also note, even though I have a partial update here, last night, the town council appointed 3 Derry representatives for the Southern New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, and Mr. O'Connor's one of them.
nice.
And I forgot who the other 2 were.
Be Jeff Moulton,
Jeff Moulton,
and the other one probably Richard Tripp.
Richard Tripp. Okay, so we have some new representation on the Regional Planning Commission.
Beautiful.
And so I think that's it for our agenda. Do we have any board member comments? Mr. Maloney?
We did have our 3rd meeting of the Gateway Committee on Tuesday, the 12th. We did not have one yesterday because we had put so much on Planning Director Robideau. I believe, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but the action items in front of her, we were going to put together an acquisition list and a drainage map. I believe we're going to be working next time we meet next Tuesday on a list of major stakeholders in the Gateway District, and then we were talking about potentially a bit of a charrette, if I've pronounced that correctly.
You did.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, great, great. Charrette. Thank you. Remember the name of the graphic arts store that used to be in Woburn? Charrette? Yeah, same. Okay, any other business? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Maloney to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.